Welcome back to Christmas Movie Club. Tonight's movie was a different sort of movie. It was not one of my favorites, but we are going to try to figure out why by digging deeper. And before we really get started, I want to ask if you could do me a favor, because I'd really love to create the best content possible on this channel. And so could you tell me down in the comments what you were hoping to see? I'd just love to know what you were hoping this video would be about. So like I said, this movie is not one of my favorites. So let's get into it. This movie moved way too slow. None of the emotions felt real. They didn't feel real to the people in the movie, so I wasn't invested in their stories at all. The trouble started from the very beginning with the Christmas tree salesman, and I was just confused as to why Lou and her brother were there. And then with Lou wanting to move to New York to write, nothing is stopping her. I mean, there's no obstacle for her to overcome. And then with Kyle, I just assumed he would end up working with Cheryl because he's a chef. She's got this restaurant. She can use the help. But twice, Cheryl mentioned she's not retiring anytime soon. So there's no urgency. It lacked a force that was pulling me forward along with the story. I normally end each of my videos with quotes from the movie, even though I don't get this question. But this movie, there was very little to pick from. When the baby was born, they made a comment that I can't believe he was born just after midnight. And through the whole movie, they had been saying extra words that didn't need to be said. But in this case, they needed to say just after midnight on Christmas Eve. Because I actually wasn't sure if it was Christmas Day or Christmas Eve or, just after midnight. I mean, they just weren't clear on that. And that would have been the time to actually say extra words. At the beginning, she comments that that Kyle is different and unique or some sort of words like that. And I don't understand why. What was different? What was unique? Like, he just seemed like a regular guy to me. So nothing else was said except for that comment. So it was left to us to try to figure it out. Funny thing is, I find my hand, one hand is doing this, and that happened a lot in the movie too. Lots of one-handed gestures that really were sticking out. I don't know why mine are doing it now. The dad says, well, I'm not the mayor, something like that, which I find funny because he was the mayor in You, Me, and the Christmas Trees, which was premiered just a couple of weeks ago. So I did find that a little bit humorous. And Cheryl had a huge missed opportunity. When she's trying to get Kyle to become a partner with her, she could have said, and if you do, you'll get the secret ingredient for the meatloaf. That was a running joke or a running theme through the entire movie. No, this movie didn't remind me of any other movies because there wasn't an objective to overcome. There wasn't really anything to compare it to, because it would just be to other movies that also didn't have an to other movies that did not have an objective to them. The scene that resonated with me was when she was reading the journal of her great-grandfather or grandfather, fuzzy on that. And he says, "Everyone I love is here," which is something she specifically said earlier in the movie. And so that made me think about how living close to family, how much that enriches my life. And even if I ever were to move away, how important it would be to visit often and that sort of thing, and to actually consider what that would do to change the way that life looked for me. There was never a strong plot other than falling in love. That seemed to be the only plot. The one thing that could have been really interesting, which would have been the lantern and the story behind it, the first time they meet is my least favorite scene because it's so uncomfortable, the whole conversation about the salt and the pepper, and he's just like glaring at them, and she's trying to make a joke out of it, and it felt awkward and uncomfortable, mostly because I've been in similar situations and I didn't like it then either, and so it just brought to mind an uncomfortable situation that I myself have faced in real life. Nobody wants that. I found both of our lead characters pretty much equally annoying. Her wanting to write in New York, she didn't have any job, she just wanted to move there. And for him, I didn't find him believable at all as a love interest. It did not feel like a good match at all. and I'm not sure why she fell for him so quickly. And when he got the text about the interview, he acted like that was the first time he'd heard about it, even though we already heard a phone conversation where he found out he had the interview. Now, it might have been giving him more details, but everything about the way that he was saying it was as if this was the first time he had heard about it. But that also might be because one of the other annoying things from this movie was they retold us information we already knew. It was like they expected us to lose interest, and they had to remind us. And then there were several montages in this too, I think. I think that it's like they just could not fill the time with this movie. Cheryl is the only one that prompted a strong emotional reaction for me. And the reason why I had the emotional reaction was because she was in Christmas Sale, which was just, last week? I think it was the Sunday movie last week as well. So I was like, is this the same lady that was in that movie? And so I was pleased to see her in a larger role because she was my favorite character in that movie. She as an actor prompted the emotional reaction, not the character. The Christmas tree shop owner had a very distinct personality, and I think even his accent was distinct. So there was, so he kind of stood out to me. And then the other one that stood out to me was actually the restaurant owner. And unfortunately, I had a very negative reaction to him, but I'm not sure that it's fair because he's a bad guy in When Calls the Heart, and he just kind of exudes that. That's part of his branding, I think. He's got that, kind of like sinisterness to him. So I did not really care for him as the restaurant owner. I think that she writes her novel with Pine Grove as the inspiration, and maybe even she writes a story about the lantern and the Santa legend. And then I think that he cooks with his aunt, and they make the restaurant a roaring success. Maybe even they partner with Lou, and she writes a cookbook for them. And the Christmas festival becomes a huge event because of the Santa legend, and because of the wonderful food that the tavern is making and this festival that they've already started. So it just becomes a huge event and attracts thousands and thousands of tourists every single year. I would choose Lou's mother because she married into the family. She would have a different point of view and a different perspective of the requirements of being part of the founder's family. So I think that she would be the most interesting, different perspective. If I were talking to the writer, I would ask them, what was the objective that you had wanted them to overcome? What was your point of view in writing this? What was the feeling that you wanted me to have? This kind of stayed one note with, very small little hills. Whereas, from what I understand of story writing, you expect it to either, climb and plummet, or it immediately plummets and then they have to climb again. So, there's this journey, and I didn't see that in this, and it may have just been edited out. I'm not sure, but I would want to know what was the objective of the writer. I have many thoughts on this movie. And start with we've already talked about a lot, but the fire outside when Lou and Kyle are talking, and it's such a small thing, but why is there a fire outside and nobody's out there? And thinking of that, I think that I'm not sure if they just didn't have the time to find an appropriate place to film this movie, but the focusing had such a shallow depth of field for so much of the scenes that it was noticeable and distracting, that they just focused out everything but the main characters. And the fact that it was like that almost all the time, or at least often enough that it felt like it was, I don't understand why they did that unless they were trying to cover up the places that they were having to film. When Lou was called to the piano to sing, I didn't realize that there were two events. So I was just like, why is she singing a song? Maybe they discussed it. Maybe I missed it because I lost interest. But I didn't understand why she was singing a song when they made such a big deal about the fact that she wasn't singing. And then all of a sudden, this is what's happening. I feel like we've really just scratched the surface over the issues with this film. If that's something that you'd be interested in, will you comment down below to let me know? Maybe you think I've gotten it completely wrong and you really love this movie. IMDb's ratings are certainly a mixed bag. Maybe that's just the way it is with Christmas movies in general. And now it's time to make the thumbnail. And I always look at the movie poster as an inspiration, because the movie poster looks like piano keys. They're sitting in front of a piano, and I don't understand why, because she does sing 2 songs, but that is definitely not the theme of the movie. It's not the point of the movie. She is a singer, but again, not the point of the movie. In the movie, she's a writer and he's a chef. So I don't understand this movie poster at all. We're still going to recreate it, but I don't understand it. All right, so let's see what we can do. So she's got her right arm up. That finger's a little higher. Looking over the left. Okay, maybe. And so then he's just looking straight ahead. All right. So, yeah. We'll see. I'm always fascinated by what I bring out of these thumbnails. Give me your thoughts. Any feedback you have, I'm open to. Would love to hear it. All right. Bye, you guys.